Hey everyone, Jimmy and Paula here, and today we are going to give you a little bit of an insight about us, and we're going to be talking to Paula about her history. So, Paula, let's kick off. Tell us a bit about your sporting background.
So, as a child, I grew up in quite a sporty household. My dad, well, and my mum encouraged my brother and myself to participate in a wide range of sports. So, from a very early age, we swam, we did team sports, we ran, and we were a very active family. And then at the age of 12, a teacher spoke to my mum and dad and said that she felt that I had an aptitude for swimming. So she suggested that I join the local swimming club where her two children were also swimming. And that was really the start of my athletic career. So from the age of 12, I still did lots of other sports, but I started to focus on competitive swimming. And that became my main sport really from the age of 14 onwards, where I started to compete quite seriously and to national level.
So, you mentioned that you did lots of other sports alongside your swimming. How important was that? On reflection, how important was that you did other sports?
I think it was very important on reflection. So I think team sports, obviously, they help you to learn to work in a team and work with other people and strategize and make decisions. But also, sport in general, for me, provided, although I didn't know it at the time, but a discipline to stay at a task and not to give up, perseverance, sort of just a strength not to give up and to do my best, I think. And now that we study with Kingsport International, the teachings there are that doing a wide range of sports at a young age is creates a very healthy base for young athletes.
So, you got up to national standard. What stroke was you competitive in?
Well, I was always an endurance athlete. And even when I was running at my junior school, I was never a sprinter. So I always competed at 400 meters, 800 meters, that I just generally seem to have a better ability for that without any specific training. And when I went into swimming, it was the same scenario. So I naturally leaned into the longer distance events. So my main event became 400 individual medley. So you do 100 meters of each stroke. So backstroke, breaststroke, butterfly, front crawl, not in that order, and an 800-meter freestyle, 400-meter freestyle. So the endurance events.
What were sort of the highlights of your swimming career?
Uh, well, I went to a national finals that was designated as an Olympic trials for the British team. Didn't go to the Olympics, but at my height, I think my highest ranking for individual medley was 16th in the country.
So not shabby at all, and that's a very competitive world that you was competing in. What happened after your swimming career?
So I retired from swimming at the grand old age of 90, but that's another story. And I continued with my academic studies, got my degree, and then went to work in the environmental industry and didn't really do any formal sport at all for a few years. And then when my family was complete, I just felt the need to go back to becoming fit again. And I just felt it was something within me that was sort of missing. So I joined the local gym and I started running and went into long distance running, ran the marathon. So endurance again. And then I was also swimming again with a master's swim group. And somebody said, well, why don't you get a bike and just do a triathlon? And I didn't really know what triathlon was at that time. So I said, yeah, why not? I had an old mountain bike and a group of us from the local gym that I belonged to decided that we would all enter triathlon together. So we didn't really do any formal training. It was all a bit ad hoc and entered the local triathlon, which is the Seven Lakes Triathlon. Anybody who knows the Seven Lakes Triathlon knows it is not the easiest of events. So to pick that for your first one and not do any homework, to be unaware of what actually the sport entailed, would have a good guess at how I found the event. So yeah, I did the Seven Lakes Triathlon. I did it on my mountain bike. Anyone who knows the event will know there's a big hill called Chibborn Hill, and a rather elderly gentleman went past me on his road bike and kind of went, "Never mind, dear," or "love," or something like that. You're almost there, and I could have cried. So I didn't know where transition out for the run was, so I was asking people like, "Where do I go?" Fortunately, my running was better than my biking, and I got around the hilly run course and I crossed the line, and there were two very distinct thoughts. One is it's a sport that needs respect and you can't just walk into it and rock up and do it. And then the second thought, almost simultaneously, was I absolutely love this. It's the hardest thing I've ever done and I want to do it again. So, and that was the beginning of my triathlon career.
That's a great story, and I think that is it's a real baptism of fire doing your very first triathlon. There's so many components to it, and there's a lot to learn. So, where did it go after you done that first one? You got that taste for it. Where did you go with it?
So I did quite a few local events and really cut my teeth and learn about the sport. Started to take it seriously, got myself a formal training plan, and started to enter events that are a little bit further afield. Started to do quite well. Entered the London Marathon, and I did that. I think that I did that consecutively for 3 or 4 years, and got on the podium for 2 of those years. I think I came third one year, and then I won it the next year. So I was sort of stepping up all the time and finding that, with a formal training plan and being sensible about structuring the training, I was starting to get some really good results. And then I found out or discovered that British Triathlon, there was like an age group, international age group competition that was global. So you could represent your your country as an age group athlete. So that meant that you competed against other people in your age group from all over the world, Europeans and world championships. So, and there are qualifiers that you have to do to qualify to get onto the Great Britain team. So I set my sights on that and managed to qualify for the European Championships, which again, it was just another level of people taking the sport seriously and it becoming more and more of almost a lifestyle, I guess. Not as a professional athlete, but, changing your lifestyle, thinking about your health in, a big picture to make sure that you could train optimally and that you could compete to your best at the highest level. So that was the next step up.
So it kind of gave you a taste for, we call it age group racing, which is just below elite level. It's national standard. It gave you a taste of that could be a real goal for you and a real objective for you. So once you had that in your sights, what happened then?
So I qualified and competed over a number of years at European and World Championships at the standard distance. So standard distance, 1,500-meter swim, 40-kilometer bike, and 10-kilometer run. Although you would go to some championships, especially European championships, and they didn't seem to take the distances too seriously. So sometimes the bike would be 45 kilometers and the run would be 11 kilometers. But it didn't matter. It was great experiences. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And I felt very proud to be able to represent my country at a sport because it was something I'd never achieved as a swimmer. So it sort of fulfilled a belief that I could represent my country, and I was very proud to do that. So after a few years of competing at the standard distance, I had heard about something called Ironman, which was sort of becoming very popular, and it was a brand that was gaining momentum and people were entering this thing called an Ironman. And I thought, well, why not? Let's see if I can complete one. So I trained for my first Ironman in 2006, I believe. And I went to Frankfurt, which is a German I think it was the German Championships or European Championships at the time. And what a fantastic event. What a fantastic day. I mean, the Ironman as a brand put a lot of effort into creating events that are unforgettable in a way. So I went to Germany, completed my first Ironman, really enjoyed it, but really had no intention to carry on. I was quite happy to go back racing standard distance because I think I'd already qualified for a European Championships the next year. I did a year of racing standard distance again.
So just for anybody that doesn't know what Ironman involves, what are the distances and disciplines that you do in an Ironman?
So you swim first. You always swim first in the triathlon. So you swim 2.4 miles and then you cycle 112 miles and then you run a marathon. So, and you have a cut off where you have to complete the event within a certain time.
And it takes a while.
You're out all day.
It's not a quick sport. And these are the days when Ironman was quite unusual. And, you might meet one person that had done an Ironman and it'll be like respect. And a lot of people would stick around with shorter distance, more club style racing for a few years before they would even think about going up to an Olympic distance. And then, it might be that somebody crazy who goes and does a half Ironman, which is all them distances split in half, or go for the full thing. So this was quite a big step up to go to Ironman. So you did one, quite content with it, come back down for a season at Olympic distance. So where did you go from there?
So that year we went on a training camp to Lanzarote, and I knew Lanzarote. I've been there before. I've always enjoyed the island, but on this training camp, I fell in love with the island, and anybody who knows me knows I absolutely have a great affinity with Lanzarote. And I finished the training camp and I just said to the coach, I think I would like to do the Ironman here. And it is supposedly the toughest course that you can do. And it's always windy. It's generally hot. It's very hilly. So there's a lot of aspects to the course that make it particularly challenging. So anyway, I entered it and trained for it, really focused on it and had a fantastic race. Really, probably one of the highlights of my racing days. It won my age group and I qualified for the World Championships in Hawaii, Kona, which was quite a day to realize that I'd actually qualified. So that was great, which meant I had to reset for the World Championships, which was in October. So Lanzarote is at the end of May. So I then had to reset and rebuild up to October. The build up to Hawaii wasn't optimal. I would say there were difficulties with the coach that I had at the time, and I probably wasn't in a position to understand where it wasn't going right at that time. I would say I didn't quite have the knowledge and the experience that I do now. So I went to Kona, I would say underprepared. I hadn't done the research about what the conditions were like over there. I'd looked at the profile, it looked pretty flat, but again, anybody who knows the race in Kona, the conditions are really tough. And I had trained with the on-course nutrition, but the on-course nutrition wasn't actually the same as what I had trained with, even though it was the same brand. It wasn't the same product. And that really created a lot of problems for me on that day.
And so we're now on to the third Ironman, and you've done possibly at the time the world's hardest Ironman. In the same year, you qualified and had to retrain to go to the World Championships, which was one of the hottest on record, I believe. It was an absolutely scorcher of a day, and it's fair to say it didn't go to plan. So what happened?
So I had a great swim. I had a really good swim. Got out. Got onto the bike course, executed my nutrition and hydration to what I had trained, but realized that the nutrition or the fluid on the course wasn't what I trained with. And I think that started to give me gastric issues. There was also at the turn of the course, you have some special needs bags and I called out for mine, but it never arrived. But I felt in such a good place that I naively thought, okay, well, you're feeling good. You probably can do without your special needs. And then the wind changed, and I believe they announced it back at the race venue that the wind had changed and that we were going to have a hard time coming back into town. And I started to come off the climb, Harvey, and started to feel my stomach wasn't right. I was starting to have issues keeping things down. Really struggled to get back into town. It was really hot. I got to the point where I couldn't put anything in. I couldn't drink any water. I couldn't take on nutrition. So I basically hobbled back into town, and I felt really disorientated. I later found out I had heat stroke, and I was in quite a bad way. But I was very disorientated, and I do remember getting off my bike. One of the catchers took my bike away, and I sort of leant down to take my bike shoes off, thinking, what am I doing? I don't need to take my bike shoes off. So I then stood up again, and I went in towards transition and looked at an official and said, what am I meant to do? And he said, well, what do you know? What do you think you're meant to do? And I burst into tears, and he said, what's going on? I said, well, I don't know what to do. And I said, I don't feel well, and I can't keep my nutrition in. And he said, well, you could go onto the run course and you could walk it. You know, you've got loads of time and you will finish the race. And he said, where did you qualify? I said, Lanzarote. And he said, well, that's really tough race. You know, if you can do that, you can do this. And he said, go into the medical tent, sit down, and as long as you don't take any medication, you know, and you don't have assistance, you can still come out and rejoin the race. So I did that. But you know, your inner voice knows, and I couldn't drink any water. And I thought, well, I could go out on the course. It's really, really hot out there. There's no shade, very little shade on the run course. I could do the 5 miles out and collapse and be in a lot of trouble. So the doctors kept checking on me, and I couldn't keep anything down. And in the end, I said, look, what can I do to ease my stomach? And they gave me something for my stomach, and that was race over, because, you know, I'd had the assistance. But at the time, it was devastating, absolutely devastating. You know, all that hard work, you know, all your hopes and dreams, and it's not easy to qualify for Kona, especially not as a woman and being higher in the age groups. But that's another conversation. It was a really tough day. And it was tough telling people. It was tough coming home. It was tough retelling the story. And it was probably the hardest point of my athletic career, I would say.
And it gave you well, you'd had 2 Ironman experiences, but it was extreme conditions. And I guess the situations that lay ahead of you could have been even worse. So to go out onto a run course and end up 10 kilometers away from a medical station just could have been absolutely a terrible situation. So you came home, had to regroup, and where did you then take your sport from there?
Well, funnily enough, at the time that I was out in Kona, I was reading Mark Cavendish's autobiography, and I was reading the section about when he went to Beijing, and he was the only track cyclist not to win a gold medal. And when they came back, they had a special BA flight, and he had to go in economy because he hadn't won a gold medal. And he was broken. But, you know, Mark Cavendish is a very inspirational athlete to me. And he picked himself up and he got himself back on his bike. And, you know, what he's done since then has been phenomenal. So I took a lot from that story, the fact that he picked himself up and just, you know, managed to put it behind him. And it was really difficult for him to do that. I mean, he was devastated. And I thought, what do I do from here? So came home, rested, regrouped, changed my coach, which was probably the best decision ever. And I'd qualified for the European Long Distance Championships, which is an ITU event, not an Ironman event. which was the following July. And I also entered another Ironman. So the following year, I raced a middle distance in Wales, which went very well. Then I went out to Spain and competed in really hot conditions, the ITU format for long distance racing, which is 4 kilometer swim, 120k bike, and a 30 kilometer run, and got on the podium, got a European silver medal, and then went to Regensburg and completed an Ironman and had a great day. That was a lot due to learning the lessons from racing in hot conditions, learning to manage myself better, but working with a coach who understood how to prepare me better, I think. So there were lots of things that turned around for me that year.
So you definitely learnt from that experience of the World Championships, and you were able to take that experience and move it into success in long distance racing, which you already had been because you'd had Lanzarote. But to come back from such a tough experience, sometimes we have to look for inspiration from certain people. And again, Mark Cavendish is absolutely a phenomenal athlete and got a phenomenal mindset towards racing. So I'm sure he did give you a lot of inspiration. So after that phase of long distance racing, where next?
Well, I stayed with Ironman because I really loved doing it and I enjoyed it. So I think the next one was South Africa, which again was they're all phenomenal races, but for different reasons. So they're all very dear to me for different reasons. South Africa was such a brilliant experience culturally, just immersing ourselves in the culture and the wildlife and having the opportunity to do a day safari. And, it was special for different reasons. Again, another hot, windy course, seemed to be attracted to those, and had a great day there. In fact, I think that was my personal best Ironman time. I think I was sixth in my age group. So again, had a really good day, really enjoyed it. And from there, I think I must have gone to Wales. So the prep for Wales hadn't been ideal. I think I'd had an injury in the winter that had prevented me from running, and there were lessons to be learned from that as well. So I knew I was going into the event underprepared for the marathon, and we knew that I was probably good for half a marathon, and then I was going to have to manage it. So for Wales, we had great conditions. I mean, the sea was choppy, but the weather was good. And again, it's a hilly course. It's a challenging course, but beautiful. And the supporters in Wales were probably the best that I've ever encountered in the world, actually. They just come out and they give up their day to support us crazy people doing this event. So that was a phenomenal day as well, and managed to podium there as well. Considering the issues with the running, I was really proud of the performance and managed to get a third.
Again, to have Wales in your body and Lanzarote and Kona, it's quite a list. So how many Ironmans have you done?
I think I've started 8 and finished 7, I believe. So, and I was due to go back to Lanzarote in 2020, but obviously that wasn't meant to be. And then it got rolled over to 2021, but things obviously globally still weren't right. And during that time, my mindset changed and I lost the motivation to train. I had a lot of other things going on with business and started a new business during the pandemic. So that was taking a lot of time and energy as well. And I just decided that for the time being, I wouldn't be racing Ironman. But I'm sort of back training and just enjoying training, enjoying feeling fitter. And I'm going to do an aqua bike this year. So to do something completely different.
And the key word that you use there is enjoyment. These are big challenges that you've taken on, and I'm not saying that they're enjoyable the whole way around. But the experience is a whole day of that it takes to do these events, and there are days that you definitely will never forget. They're phenomenal experiences. Let's talk about your professional career and just give us a bit of a background about how you got into being a coach and helping people, and where you are with it now.
So when I finished my swimming career, I became a swimming teacher because the club that I was at, we had a really healthy swim school attached. And I didn't want to leave the sport. And it was a way to stay connected to the sport and to give something back and to still be involved. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed teaching the young children to swim. Then I had my academic studies. I had my family and I worked professionally in the environmental sector. But once I'd had my children, the nature of the work is it's not 9 to 5. And I just decided that I wanted to do something that I could fit in with my family in a better way. So a couple of friends asked me if I would teach their children to swim. So I retrained, I updated my qualifications to make sure that I was sort of compliant and started to teach my friends' children to swim with some one-to-one sessions. And it sort of grew into a swim school. It sort of ballooned. And again, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's really nice because I'm still connected to some of those people and I've seen their children grow up and get married. And, so it's, that was very fulfilling. I also trained as a adult and child teacher. So I was teaching adults with their babies as well, which I really enjoyed. So that side of my career was growing and growing and growing. It ran concurrently with me wanting to get fit again. So I was training for the marathon and discovering triathlon. So I was spending quite a bit of time at the gym that I taught at. And again, the suggestion was made about doing a triathlon. And they also said, well, you're here teaching swimming. Have you considered being a fitness instructor? And I've always loved sport. I've always enjoyed being fit. And it fitted with the family at the time. So I decided that I would do that. So I qualified as a fitness instructor, then did my personal training qualification, and then got a little bit carried away with courses and started sort of chasing courses because I wanted to be the best trainer that I could be at that time. So started doing more personal training, built up a good client base. Some of those people I'm still working with. So, which is amazing. And then following on from that, I decided that I would set up my own studio, which I went on to do and created the studio that we're now at.
You got two stories aligning alongside each other, your sporting career and your professional career. And again, it sounds like things were going alongside each other, as in establishing your facility, the facility, and also going into a much more serious level of triathlon at the same time.
Yeah.
So where did you then take your professional career as you coaching people rather than a facility?
So I qualified as a triathlon coach with British Triathlon and started coaching at a local club. It's something that I love to do, just love to do it. Great group of people. They've become friends. So it's really enhanced my life doing the coaching, but also having the opportunity to work individually with people as well and help prepare them for their events. And yes, there's the science involved and there's the planning and preparation and, periodization and everything that goes with preparing for an event. But I think the other thing that I think enhances what I'm able to do is just the years of experience of racing, of making many mistakes, the lessons that I had to learn to bring me where I am now. And I think most of the triathletes that I work with, I would say there aren't many scenarios that they talk about or things that they come across while they're training or racing that I probably haven't experienced in some way or know someone who's experienced it, that I can bring that to them as well and say, yes, it brings an empathy because you understand what they might be going through.
Absolutely. And there's the thing of having the knowledge, which is you could read it in a book, you could read it in a magazine, somebody's experience, but then there is the actual real life experience it is giving you of what it feels like and how the emotions go alongside that knowledge. And that can go a really long way. As a sports person, to be the best, you've got to keep looking. You can't just say, I know it and this is how I'm gonna do it, because sometimes it just doesn't work. And I think that's a really interesting thread, that you've always had an open mind. You've always been ready to look for different ways and different challenges, whether it's physical or educational, to be able to move forward. So, Paula, we're gonna wrap up in a minute, but how would you conclude your career to this point?
Oh,
And what message would you give somebody that's listened to you and hopefully is inspired by your stories?
I've had so much fun. I am still having fun. I think what I've learned is to accept that it's not plain sailing. It's not a linear upward curve. And in fact, if you've got time, I've got one short story. I was very lucky to be it was a British course, and I was able to spend time with the GB canoe slalom coach. And he spoke to us about the journey. And he said you can see that it could be like a canoe slalom course. Sometimes you go with the flow, you're going downstream, you're on course and everything's fine. He said, but sometimes on a slalom course, you have to stay still in the water and you have to back paddle like crazy to even maintain where you are. And sometimes you have to go back up the course to stay on the course. So you're going backwards to go forwards. And his analogy was, it's not a straight line. It's never a straight line. There are always things that will come up. There are always obstacles. And, if you stay true to, I guess, your values and what you believe in, and remain open-minded, always be willing to learn. We don't always have all the answers. We don't have the answers, but always be willing to learn. You eventually get to where you want to be. And obviously on a canoe slalom, that's going to be the finish line. But for us, it's accepting that it's not always easy training. It's not always easy preparing for an event. It's not always easy learning to be the best coach you can be. But stay on the course, and stay true to your values, and just try and deliver and be the best that you can be. I think that's probably the thing for me. I don't know if that's kind of an answer to the question.
I think it's a great message. I think it's a really great message. And it is really easy for things to get tough and to walk away. And if you haven't finished the job, you've got to find another way. And I think being a sports person really helps you understand that, and it helps you understand taking that across into other aspects of your life, whether it's being a coach or being a business owner, which can be very challenging itself. Well, Paula, thank you very much for the insight and your background. And I think it's good for people to hear your story, because as coaches, we try to keep ourselves to ourselves. But every now and then, it's good to know what your background has been. So thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you very much, Jimmy.